my name is Julianne Meyer, and you are watching Own Your Wellness, and I am so excited about today's guest. We have an amazing soul with us. You guys are going to be so interested in everything we're going to talk about. I've been waiting. I mean, I just met him, so it hasn't been a super long time, but ever since I found him, I have been wanting to have this conversation. So I'm just not going to waste any time. Let's bring him on. Carlos Casados, how are you today? Welcome to the show.
Doing great. Julianne, it's wonderful to see you.
Finally, it's almost in person, but
Yep.
yeah, it's nice to connect on a different level. So I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Good. Yay. As I mentioned, I've been looking forward to this conversation. Now, we were just talking about this, everybody who's watching, about how you have so many different talents, and it all kind of seems like, you do a million different things, but it's all connected. And so I would just love to start out with maybe you telling us a bit about yourself and your own wellness journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to share. But before I do that, can I just tell you, I love the introduction to the show. I was watching and it was so positive and beautiful. The music behind it and the imagery, it actually caught me in the feels a little bit. I'm like, whoa, don't do that. It really touched me. I saw these beautiful images of people dancing around and the children jumping and people, feeling happy. So I just wanted to before I even get into that, just let you know, I really like the intro to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's exactly what we wanted. So
yeah, it definitely had that effect. So well, a little about me. Lifelong learner, guilty as charged. I just can't seem to stop this intense craving, this desire and hunger for learning and exploring and expanding and transforming. I really feel like I'm living the kind of life that I wanted to live as a kid, which was a one of exploration and discovery and actually finding out not just about the world outside, but about the world inside, my own mind, my consciousness. And when I say mind, I'm not only talking about thinking, I'm also talking about feeling, other kinds of experiences too. You might already guess that I'm definitely a feeler in addition to being a thinker. So my journey kind of started a long time ago. Before I even began officially studying other things, I was so curious about what happens when we fall asleep. Why is it that I go to sleep at night and there's this blank spot in my memory. I don't remember falling asleep. And then sometimes I don't even remember my dreams. Mm-hmm. So I started experimenting. It was completely, of my own creation, I guess. I would practice falling asleep. And then the moment I detected that feeling, I would sit up in my bed. And I did this over and over again. Now, we've heard of torture being done this way to people where they wake them up and don't let them sleep, partly because it does cause changes in consciousness. But for me, it wasn't torturous. It was like I was discovering different aspects of my own consciousness by doing so. I started to explore trance states. And then that led me down the path of asking about lucid dreaming. How do you lucid dream? I remember being probably 4 years old and asking that question. And I was told, well, just repeat to yourself over and over again. I'm going to, I remember my dreams. I remember my dreams. I'm awake. I remember my dreams. And immediately the first night, I think I had a lucid dream.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And anytime I heard anything about something esoteric, like, magic or the occult or alchemy or herbology or anything that wasn't mainstream, something unusual, it always evoked an image of like a wizard or a wizened kung fu master or maybe a Jedi. So anything that I saw out in the world, it spoke to me. My heart, my soul sang every time I saw that. So what did that send me on? It sent me on a path of, looking at books, asking questions when I didn't get the answers. I was still burning to know. Mm-hmm. So my journey started very early. I think my mother asked me, or she at least relates to me that when people ask me what I wanted to be, even at 4, I would say usually something like Kung Fu Master or Jedi or something, right? And these could sound very naive and cute in a way if you think about a little kid doing that. But it just never went away. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
just wanted to be tapping my human potential. So anything and everything that could do that interests me. So I began a journey of learning hatha yoga and meditation very early. My mother started me on that path.
Wow.
I was, a good Catholic boy when I was young. So obviously prayer became a part of that, seeking the experience of something that you might call spiritual or transcendent, which led to me spending long hours at libraries and going into the esoteric section and reading about those things. And then eventually, when I could study martial arts, I began at about 8 or 9 to study martial arts. That was a long journey of a few decades of that, deep diving into Chinese martial arts and, of course, philosophy and Chinese medicine and, meditation methods. Which eventually led to me studying Ayurvedic medicine and going to the California College of Ayurveda. And that wasn't quite what I wanted to do to make my living. And so I continued on. Each time I discovered great things, I also discovered that it was difficult to figure out how to make that jive with the needs of putting a roof over your head and having the ability to afford things.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us healer types run into that and have to have our own story arc in order to overcome those obstacles and allow those obstacles to teach us something about who we are. So it eventually came to a point where I was studying all these Eastern and also Western mystery traditions, and I still couldn't figure out how to make that jive with the material world of needing money and things like that. And I thought to myself, well, if I want to be a wizard one day, which would absolutely make my heart sing, how could I do that and live in this physical material world? Can't exactly just, well, I thought that I couldn't just put a label on my door that says wizard is in or wizard is out, be back at, Now where I'm at 51, I actually think I probably could do that and it would be interesting. But needless to say, I found an alternative path that allowed me to still have that kind of deep appreciation for the esoteric, but would still speak to the Western mind, the rational mind, the scientific mind. And that was to start finding what was in between all of that was psychology, psyche, which in Greek means the soul, which we translate as the mind, right? The study of which. So things like neurolinguistic programming, which has become very popular. It's a branch of psychology that is quite deep. A whole method of learning how to see things from a meta perspective, to understand patterns, and then to subsequently use those patterns in powerful ways to create changes. Well, that crosses over into hypnosis, right? The ability to coach people through the various linguistic and framing qualities that cause people to change their beliefs in deep ways that ultimately change their experience. And the way they crossed over into one another brought me down the path of realizing that there's so much that we can do about our condition. This essential condition that even the Buddha referred to as suffering, right? We suffer because of ignorance to our true nature, ignorance to the way things work. We fight against reality, and that creates incredible tension, incredible suffering. So anything that I could do to teach myself and allow me to be of service to people that matter to me, the people I care about, felt empowering to me. So at about 18, in addition to all these other things, I started to experiment with psychedelics. Ooh, right? It's a kind of a hot button.
It is.
Right? These days, there's so much scientific research that's been opened back up again after 40 years of prohibition and censorship. Now it's starting to be okay to talk about it again. Johns Hopkins University and many other large and recognized institutions are doing all sorts of interesting things, studying the brain and realizing the transformative power of some of these experiences for people, whether they have PTSD or depression or anxiety, or whether they're using it for creativity purposes and problem solving and exploring the mind and the intellect, relationship bonding experiences, and so on. So now these clinical trials are available all over the world now, and even in the United States. So that path for me wasn't about getting stoned or just kind of, escaping my reality per se. It was more like a desire to crack through and break on through to the other side, as Jim Morrison would have put it. Learn what's there. And to be able to reflect and see myself staring back at myself in the mirror, and to really experience that, to learn something of profound impact. And so alongside all these things, I was comparing and contrasting my childhood altered states experiences with my newly found psychedelic experiences with eventually my experiences in things like hypnosis and NLP and other modalities. So nowadays, I don't know what to call myself other than a curious seeker and a healer, and someone who actually cares about making a difference for other people, helping people to transform their conflicts and turn them into grist for the mill, energy that can help them convert those negative experiences into learnings that allow them to have maybe a post-traumatic growth instead of a post-traumatic stress syndrome.
I love that.
If you ask me what got me into it, I could also easily say that it was my own traumas and dramas growing up that forced me to decide, well, either I'm going to succumb under the weight of those things, or I'm going to do something about it and crack that egg, break on through, and figure out what's on the other end of it. And there was a dark time, got to be honest. There was a time in my life where I wasn't sure if I would make it. That's not something I'm fond of reliving, but when I look at it now, I feel safe to look at it. I feel like it's okay to see it for what it was and to ask myself, what did I learn? What was my takeaway from that? Do I have to take away the feelings and keep reliving those, or can I just take away, the lesson? Well, for me, it was about the lesson, and I'm really glad that I experienced it, because there are a lot of people suffering in the world, and it allows me to have compassion for the suffering that does exist, and allows me to understand and get it, to get why someone might feel a huge conflict with the way things are compared with the way they wish it was. I get it. I totally get it. So
that's a good thing. Oh, no, I just said that's a beautiful thing, because I just think about, most of the healers that I know really have experienced something or multiple things and lived to tell about it. It didn't, use the lesson, as you say.
Yeah. There's a kind of a famous expression that I did not create, but I think it's useful, is, share your scars, not your wounds, kind of thing.
Oh, I've never heard that. I love that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like the idea of that, because when you teach something, you get to learn it twice, right? So if you turn around and create a circularity, a sense of, all right, I've healed myself. Now, what do I do with this? It's not that you're obligated to do it, but there's a certain completion or sense of fitting into the bigger picture when you start to help other people through the same or different things, but just the idea of contributing and making it about more than just your individual ego experience in life, but also about whatever that bigger picture is. You want to call it spirituality, or a deeper philosophy, or contributing, whatever it is, but it's beyond just you. It's, at least, if nothing else, that part of you which relates to everything else.
That's beautiful. I don't know why, and I feel compelled to share this, but for some reason it keeps in, coming in like through my mind. I'm like, okay, okay, fine, I'll share it. Something that you said about being a wizard is really sticking with me, and it's like you've always known that that's who you want to be. You just didn't have what would be the proper vernacular for it, but that's really what you are. If you really, you know what I'm saying? And it's just funny
Yeah.
because I remember when I was really little, I couldn't speak yet. And this is one of my earliest memories. I was in my crib and I saw this. I lived in a haunted house growing up, of course.
Wow.
And yeah, but I saw that, and this is before I could talk. And I saw this black thing standing at the end of my like crib, staring at me. And all I could think, the way I remembered it, was Darth Vader.
Wow. Yeah.
And so my memory was always, it was Darth Vader this entire time, because I didn't know what else to call it. I had no way to describe it to anybody besides Darth Vader. And so it's funny because that was, I now that I'm older and I know what that was, it's fascinating. But at the time it was Darth Vader, because I didn't. So like, you're a wizard, but you didn't know what else to call it.
Well, words often fail when you're describing experiences because, the words are essentially, they're placeholders, or we might call like a trance key that we use to unlock a memory or an experience. So often the words are metaphors. They're just, it's a bit like in NLP, we talk about Korzybski's statement that the map is not the territory. You can't confuse the map for the territory. It might be useful as a representation, but at the end of the day, we have to remember that it's more than just the words. So Darth Vader works fine. And when I'm working with someone, in my office with either a trauma or something, I often just ask them, how would you describe it? What words would you use? And I might prompt them if they're stuck, using induction and past memories and perhaps a clinical intuition, if you will. But I want to use their words and only modify those words when I'm teaching them how to be more creative about something. Like I want to create something directly, then we can go back and forth and, discover new ways of describing things, which can often change your experience internally. But the first thing is always acknowledging what is, not going in and trying to change it. It's a little bit like the metaphor of, the wife and is talking about her bad day and the husband coming in and just immediately wanting to fix it. Now that's a kind of a trope, right? Like we say that a lot. I'm not saying that all men are like that by any means, but it's one of those things that you hear a lot about male-female dynamics. Stop trying to fix it. Just listen to me, right? In a therapeutic setting, it's so important we stay in rapport with the person and really meet that exactly as it needs to be met. So sometimes it really is about having compassion before presenting solutions. Understand them first.
Yeah, a lot of people just want to be heard. It's like sometimes I'm speaking from a woman's point of view, with that particular example you gave. A lot of the times we just want, that's enough to say it, and then we can let it go.
Absolutely. We often self-correct
Yeah.
just by hearing us, spew the poison out of our mouths. We reflect because, after all, we're not stupid, most of us, and we have a generative intelligence inside of us that just needs to be sometimes led to the problem. When it's led to the problem, it figures out a way to fix it or change it, transform it. So people say, I want a sounding board. Well, maybe that's not the best metaphor, because I want to be more than a board. I don't want to be bored being your board. I would rather be a human being who cares about you and who actually wants to bear witness to what you're going through. That's a wonderful way to support. I don't these days consider myself like per se a Christian. I don't like labels like that. I'm a lot more open-minded about it, but there is some really great concepts in Christianity, great guidelines. One of them is that concept of bearing witness. I'm not sure if Christianity is the only one that has that, but that's where I heard it first. To bear witness is to truly open oneself and really hear them out, to acknowledge, to be present while they're expressing whatever it is. And that alone has a quality. I think, from maybe like a neuroscience perspective, those mirror neurons kick in, and the empathy and perhaps the compassionate place inside of the brain kicks in, and we model off of each other. We both influence each other. I'm influenced by my clients as much as I'm influencing my clients. I just have the insight through practice and experience to know where and when I can allow certain kinds of influence in versus rejecting it and having healthy boundaries and all that kind of stuff. That takes practice.
Yeah.
I'm there to model. I'm there to model for my clients perhaps a better way, a way that is, less stuck in the problem, more aligned with the solutions, and less confined to the four walls of their problem, and more outside the box and into a resourceful state.
I love that.
Yeah.
So we talked about a little bit about, you mentioned clients, and I just wanted to make sure we put up your website so that people can reach out and find you, because, well, for those of you who are watching, I found Carlos on Yelp, and then I stalked him onto his website, and we went from there. So I'm telling you right now, you should go check it out.
I'm glad you did that, because I just revamped my website. So you're making me feel very fulfilled by doing that, to be honest. It took a while to get it dialed in, and there will always be modifications, but I'm actually pretty proud of the site, namely because of the overall feel of it, but also because I spent a good amount of time expressing what I thought might be questions. And I asked a lot of people, what do you think people would be wanting to know? And it has a lot of links to, for example, my other projects, the podcasts that I do, and the documentary that I was in, and the Sacred Medicine Journeys retreat and personal growth retreat thing that I do. So I have no idea why I'm ringing here. Hold on a second. Stop that process.
Stop me.
Oh my God. Okay, now I've got to find you again. Hang on. There we go. Okay, cool. One of my messenger services. Anyway, so by going to hypnotherapiebreakthrough.com, it's it's a kind of a hub or a nexus where you can find a lot of different things, including my YouTube channel, my socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of that's there. So
before we go to commercial too, I would love for you to touch on this project that you were telling me about before we started the show, and you briefly touched on it just now. I would love for you to share with the audience about that.
Wonderful. Okay. In brief, the website for that is sacredmedicinejourneys.com.
And we'll put that up after the commercial break for everybody too. But they can find it through this website too, right?
Yeah, there's a link on there, because I do a lot of different stuff. So if you just kind of explore through there, you'll find a link. It's essentially a project that I started with a dear friend and colleague of mine who lives in New York. We're offering transformative psychedelic experiences that are in a retreat format, with a lot of vetting beforehand to make sure that it's safe and that we have the right intentions, and coaching going in, then the experience for 4 to 8 days depending on the program, and then subsequent coaching to integrate the process, which is kind of unique. There aren't. Yeah, it's that whole idea that this experience is powerful, profound, and should be respected as such, treated with deep respect and care, to preserve the safety and to not have any harm come to the mind or the body. So we have collectively many, many years of coaching experience. And I personally was doing this informally below the radar, because it was dangerous to do so, for about 30 years or more. So doing this now as a kind of above ground, in the light of day kind of thing is still a little bit, we're careful about it. We don't want to have any trouble or create any trouble. So we're looking at places that have decriminalized the use of it, so that we're not going to be hassled and not have to deal with any of that. So there are a lot of places in the US and also abroad where we'll be having these wonderful healing retreats that involve a huge transformational experience, so that the person comes and they really feel transformed by the end, and a transformation that lasts, that
Exactly.
really changes their experience. So we're super excited about that.
Well, I just want to point out something that, I really want to highlight in case people missed it, is that the thing that I love about what you just said is that it's not just this experience and then you go home and that's the end. It's there's follow up. It's like, okay, that
Yeah.
was great. Now what?
Yeah. You come over there. Bye. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
bye. It's been real. That did happen.
Yeah.
But I
No.
love that. I think that that is truly unique and amazing because, I don't know, at least I've never done what you're talking about, but I could see myself having this experience and then questioning, did that really happen afterwards? Is this real?
Sure. Sure.
So without the
Yeah.
follow-up, I would start to believe whatever. So that's cool. That makes it last, building those new neural pathways.
Definitely. And I just wanted to kind of grab onto the tail end of what you just said. Psychedelics, what they're discovering is that it brings one very, very close to being able to kind of access the whole deep neuroplasticity of the brain.
Mhm.
So there's something called the default mode network, which allows us to kind of know the difference between us and them and our habits. And we go back to those things, how we sense our normalcy, right? That's all to do with the default mode network in the brain. And we go into that every day, especially at night when you go to sleep.
Hmm.
Psychedelics temporarily diminish that. So that's why people, or one of the reasons why people have experiences of, I'm not me. I feel like I'm connected to everything. And these new novel experiences are starting to feel normal, or more
Mhm.
things are feeling novel to me than they normally do. Wow, that tree is just so incredible. And it's a beautiful experience. But even if you had negative experiences that you're working through, you're accessing new portions of the brain and they're becoming more active to be able to move through and access a wisdom aspect of your mind, so
I
that
love
you
that.
can work through those things. So some people have asked, hey, if you do these things, are you going to remember what happened? Is it going to get
Mhm.
no? And the answer is no. You're not going. The answer is yes, you'll remember. No, you're not going to forget. It's especially true when you frame the experience in the way that we frame the experience, which is with a lot of intentionality, focusing on set, which is mindset, and
Mhm.
setting, which is the environment that you do it in, and any practices that are around it are supported by years and years of meditation training, NLP, and so on, that makes the framing very, very clear, so that this experience, which would normally be kind of loosey-goosey and all over the place,
Mhm.
still powerful but pretty broad, allows it to have a focus and a place to
Yeah.
land gently into this crescendo of psychedelic experience that lands softly and comfortably and integrates and weaves into your daily life. That's the whole point.
Fascinating. I'm so you don't know this about me, but I used to work in addiction recovery. So this is a topic that's
Cool.
absolutely fascinating to me
Yeah.
because, I mean, I come from a world that it looks like in a certain box, and I've never necessarily 100% agreed with that box. So I
Well,
like
it's kind of ironic that these powerful psychedelic experiences have been some of the most effective permanent changes in addictions. So
Oh, I
they have
believe it.
such a high degree of percentage of change. Like, for example, smoking. Okay.
Mhm.
I saw a study that was published maybe back in 2014 even. I don't know. But it was talking about of the participants, at least in this select group, there was an 80% drop of the smoking, even 6 months later, because of the psilocybin mushroom experience combined with the psychotherapy that they were doing, whatever process they were doing. So that's not an uncommon thing, that people will take a strong dose of mushrooms and then they say when they're done, you know what? I'm done with alcohol. I'm done. I don't want to touch it. but it's not because they're going and getting like stoned with it. They're taking these things and they're actually confronting their demons, if you will. And they're actually recognizing how it's tearing up their life and it's taking control and it's putting them in the passenger seat of their life rather than in the driver's seat. Well, you start to see that. And at some point you stand up psychologically in your psychedelic experience and you decide, hey, that's not for me. I know what I want for me. And then you're starting to come from a wisdom and compassion space that transforms everything. And then things like alcohol or whatever your addiction was doesn't look so pretty anymore. And doesn't look appealing. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't even attract you because you have such a sort of a reboot, if you will, to your neurons. You know, you have at least the opportunity to make that change and to make it stick. So we say, make the change and keep the change.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, we are going to go to a commercial break. While we're at break, can you please, Carlos, pop in the private chat, the other website, so I can put it up? All right. Awesome. So we'll be back in just a moment. This is, I don't even want to go to commercial. This is so much fun. It's even better than I thought and hoped and expected. So, but it is time for us to go. We got sponsors and we got to do their commercials. So we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, I'm Julianne Meyer. You're watching Own Your Wellness, and today's special guest is Carlos Casados. And before we bring him back, I forgot to say hello to everybody who is watching us live. Thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, everybody who's watching us Netflix style on TV. We appreciate you too, but let's bring our guest back. Welcome back.
Hello.
So before we went to commercial break, I asked you to pop in the chat that your other website for the journey that we were just talking about. So here it is, everyone. I find this very fascinating because you would think that somebody such as myself might have an issue with what you're talking about, but I don't see it that way. I see it as a tool to help people. So I hope, some of the other people that maybe have addiction issues could use this as a tool as well. So I just want to make sure that as somebody who comes from that world, help yourself, whatever resonates with you.
Well, trailing on that, you mentioned Netflix right before you said that. And on Netflix, there is a show, like a series, like a 7-part series by Michael Pollan, based upon Michael Pollan's most recent, New York Times best-selling book, How to Change Your Mind. And it's a documentary style series that is based on the book. And it gets into not all, it gets into many of the issues of psychedelics and what they are and their history. There are definitely more exhaustive documentaries out there that can get into the weeds really deeply. For me, it's not exhaustive, but I would think for many people it'd be a little bit too much. I love information, so for me it's wonderful. But you can find out about how it's being used for addicts to deal with heroin and alcohol and smoking and other things. And you can also find out how it's being used or been used for creativity and problem solving and interpersonal relationships and helping trauma, to transform PTSD, war veterans, and all sorts of stuff. So, if people are curious about it, there are a host of wonderful free to watch videos, either on Netflix or on YouTube. And you can also reach out directly to me and I'll be happy to, get into it with you.
I switched it around so that people can go directly to that website too.
Was that magic that you did that? That's pretty cool. You waved your fingers and suddenly, that's pretty cool.
Who knew? Anyway, so during the commercial break, I was just thinking about your many, many skills and talents. And I just want to say that you're very well spoken. And, as a fellow professional student, if there is such a thing, if I could get paid to go to school, that's what I would do.
Learner.
Exactly. That would be the best job ever.
We kind of get to do that.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a real gift. It's a real beautiful gift that we have.
It is. It is. But, I just wanted to touch on the idea of the title that you came up with, because, we have to use language at some point to communicate, at least get the conversation going. Yeah. And you and I were talking beforehand about like hypnosis and hypnotherapy and, these ideas of how people think they know, but they don't really. So I'd love for you to explain a little bit about that.
Absolutely. I think when you say hypnosis or hypnotherapy to most people, it's like when you ask them about other words, like what is comedy? They've never really thought to define it. So they've been using the word rather hypnotically, I might say, without knowing actually what it means and using it in sentences and referring to it. So you kind of have to parse it out a little bit, kind of strip down the layers and realize, oh, there are a lot of words like that we're using and throwing around without really truly understanding it. We know how we might be able to associate it with a function of some kind, like money. Most people don't actually know what money is. They know how to use money. They know how to identify money, but they can't explain to you what money is, really, truly. They try, and then all of a sudden they scratch their head and go, what the hell? So hypnosis is one of those things. It's an old word, but it's really, let me rephrase that. It's not that old of a word. It's based on a very old word. It's based on hypnos, the god of sleep, okay, in Greek. Because there used to be these sleep temples, 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, where priests would have people come in and they would do various practices that were kind of trancy, and they would often fall asleep, and then their dreams would be interpreted, and they would work with the imagery. Very much like that. And we don't know a lot about that, but we have references that tell us just a little bit about that. They didn't call it hypnosis at the time, but certainly the mascot, if you want to put it that way, was Hypnos, the god of sleep. And of course, there's Morpheus, the god of dreams, and so on. But in 1850s-ish, there was a man named James Braid who had learned about this experience of guiding people into trance, and had read about and studied some of the work of Anton Mesmer, who was healing people supposedly through his magnetic passes and so forth. And he came up with the term hypnosis because it looked like people were asleep. He would do these things and people would have their eyes closed. Sometimes their chin would be, down and their body would be slumped over. And then they would, he would suggest some things to them, and then he would wake them up, and then they would perform in that way that was suggested to their minds. But not long after him doing that, he started to notice that people were responding to suggestion without appearing asleep. So it caused him to question that title and actually ask the question, what else could I call it? So he came up with a wonderfully simple word, monoideism. And we know why that didn't catch. It's not very catchy. Hypnosis absolutely is a catchy word, and it's easy to say, and it sounds mysterious, but monoideism really suggests that there's kind of a selective focus where other things are less important, and the thing or the object of your focus becomes more important to the exclusion of those other things. And in that sort of shifted mental state, suggestions were given and accepted by the individual and acted out. So that's probably closer to the reality of what it is, because it's not sleep. You can relax a person, and you can teach them like autogenic training, how to relax different parts of their body and how to suggest to themselves that they're safe, they're comfortable, they're at ease, and so on. And that's very valuable. There's tons of benefits, many, many, many research papers about the deep relaxation response, which is a measurable response in the brain and body. But it's not necessary in order to respond to suggestion. We know that advertising works, otherwise it wouldn't be a several billion-dollar industry, or more, trillion, I don't know what the actual number is, but because we do respond to suggestion. So it's not necessary to have a special state, a mental state that is universal to everyone who's being hypnotized, in order to receive and accept and respond to suggestion. That lays us into a different scenario of, well, then what do we call it? And, is hypnosis even real? And what's the point? Why would you call yourself a hypnotist if that's not true? And I would say we don't necessarily know of any one particular state that is hypnosis per se, but it's maybe a whole spectrum of different altered states of consciousness. And the hypnotist is just someone who's skilled at coaching a person into different states. So if I wanted you to feel confident, I might relax you into a deeply relaxed state before suggesting those things, but I also might just start talking to you and get you to sit up straight and get you breathing more intensely. Open up your eyes. Imagine yourself in a state where you're doing something that you already know and you're already good at. And all of a sudden, feel what that's like in your physiology as you're breathing, like that time when you crossed the finish line after that race, or you made that perfect swoosh into the basket when, there were 3 seconds left on the clock, or whatever it is. I might get you to do that. And I'm just evoking emotional states. And then I'm calling attention to that. And then I'm going to weave that into a sort of a suggested word spell, if you will, like where I'm weaving ideas to you cleverly and skillfully, so that you feel motivated, you feel driven, you feel confident. And then I get you to affirm that. And in those moments, we are strengthening the power of that suggestion. And that can also be done covertly, conversation. You've done this very well before, haven't you? Or, can you think of something like that? Oh, yeah. What was that like? Tell me about that. And through the conversation, you're weaving a wonderful story. You're getting them to do most of it. You're just prompting them in the right ways. And all three of those methods could be equally powerful and equally effective. So what is hypnosis? Again, back to that question. I think that each hypnotist has their own idea of it, and there have been hundreds of scientific studies. I don't believe that we've had any one of those studies absolutely conclude what hypnosis is. So I will tell you what I think it is. We just have a brain. The brain has what we refer to as a mind, but mind is just a construct. Really, we have thoughts and consciousness, awareness. A hypnotist is someone who guides you through language. And by the way, language is not only words, language is body language, language is expression, language is the context I put you in. You're coming to my office, you know you're coming to a hypnotist's office. So in your mind, you're expecting certain things. All of that is a communication that influences you. Your need to change that habit of biting your nails or smoking cigarettes or getting angry or whatever it is, your need to make that change is also part of what I'm taking advantage of, and utilizing, transforming into what you want, to be calmer in the face of struggle, to be free of your cravings around cigarettes or whatever. So I'm using language and communicating that to help you shift your beliefs, to change your experience of those things so that your results also change. That is a lot more open-ended. It's a lot more universally applicable. I mean, it's kind of like that could fit a lot of situations. You know, when we're constantly exposed to media, why does that affect you? And why does it affect your mood or increase your anxiety? Because your brain receives that communication repetitively, and we start to relate to the stories. The anchor persons will use certain kinds of language and show you certain kinds of imagery, all there to stimulate certain parts of the brain, right? The amygdala part of the brain, the fight and flight, freeze portions of the brain. And when you stimulate that in combination with certain images and words, it starts to stick.
Yeah.
It's essentially understanding how the brain works and turning it to your advantage rather than your disadvantage. So is it true that people, can make people cluck like chickens and think that they're Britney Spears dancing on stage? Yes and no. There's a certain amount of compliance in a setting like that. Know that it's entertainment. If you respond quickly enough and you can let go of control and enjoy that experience of being funny and being the center of attention, then you're the ideal person to call up to the stage. And if you're not, they'll put you back in your seat. They're guiding you through a certain series of ideas. And if you follow those ideas and are receptive to them, then of course you're going to be highly responsive. And when I say responsive, I mean responsive to suggestion. And of course, you'll have a wonderful time, and it'll feel like, oh my God, I thought I was like driving a sports car or whatever it is. And everybody laughs, and of course you're affirmed by everybody clapping at you. So there's lots of just kind of social expectation and conforming to expectations and things like that. But in a hypnotherapy session, one where you're doing therapeutic hypnosis, the goal is to remember that this is a very, very respectful experience. This is about someone who has troubles and wants to transform them, or someone who has qualities they want to bring out more of. In situations like that, you're not doing something to a person. You're doing something with a person. You're inviting them, and they're cooperating with the experience because they want to feel better than they were feeling. And so
I'm sorry. I feel like it goes back to setting, the setting.
100%.
Sorry,
Bingo.
you were saying.
No, bingo. Because that's exactly why, my colleague and I, who started the sacred medicine journey, are really well equipped to handle anything that comes up in a setting like that. If someone has a difficult experience and difficult emotion come up, we have like heaps and heaps of, thousands and thousands of hours of dealing with that and handling that in an appropriate way, in a way that's compassionate and leaves them feeling empowered at the end. So yes, there's a lot in common. It's not exactly the same, but there's a lot in common, and there's a lot that translates across.
Mm-hmm.
So, for people who are wondering whether, hypnosis could be good for them or could it ever be bad for them, I would say, hypnosis is about teaching you how to use your mindset to achieve your goals, whatever they may be. And if you are thoughtful about those goals, mindful about the ecological effect of the goals. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, you're asking yourself, how does this affect my health? How does it affect my relationships? How does it affect my job? How does it affect my ability to earn money? How does it affect the environment I'm in? If all of those things are positive and there's no trouble, then how could it be anything but positive? There
Mm-hmm.
is no harm in that. There's no getting stuck in hypnosis forever. It's not
Mm-hmm.
possible. It's never happened once, and it never
Yeah.
will. There's no such thing. There's no demonic possession in hypnosis because I'm not calling on demons. I'm calling upon your healing mind. I'm calling upon your deep intellect, that part of you that protects you when you sleep.
Mm-hmm.
What could possibly be harmful about that? There's no revealing of secrets that you don't want to reveal because it's a cooperative act. If something doesn't feel good, your feelings reside in your deep mind.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, when you're relaxed and residing in your attention in the deep mind, if you were asked to do something unsavory, you would instantly not be okay with that.
Yeah.
Contrary to popular opinion, you can't hypnotize somebody um, against their will per se.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get them to do things that they feel are morally reprehensible. You can um, give someone license to feel a little less inhibited by the things that are blocking them. So if they wanted to be better at approaching a potential romantic partner,
Mm-hmm.
asking for a date, asking for a phone number, saying hello, they might normally feel constricted, and they can access those positive states in a hypnotic setting and rehearse and retrain themselves to be the kind of person who would warmly go up and approach and introduce themselves and feel confident doing so. So yeah, there's really all the pluses and really none of the problems.
I
I
love
love
it.
hypnosis. It's a wonderful tool, and it's one of the many tools I have in my toolbox. It's something I use on a practically daily basis.
I love
Uh,
it.
yeah,
And can you believe it? It is the end of the show.
I believe it.
Time flies. Time flies when we're having a wonderful conversation. I just
Yes,
want to say thank you
you're so
so
welcome.
much for joining us today. It has been absolutely wonderful. I don't know, I just feel relaxed and yeah, it's been fun for me. So I know everybody watching had a good time too.
Yay. Well, if I may just mention something, because we talked about uh, creating resilience, and I just wanted to say one or two things around it so that we do touch upon it. I realize we didn't get too deeply into it, but
Yes, but we do have to wrap up
okay,
because it is that
okay,
time. So
fair enough, fair enough,
unfortunately,
fair enough.
we'll have to have you come back if you're up
Yeah,
for it.
absolutely. That would be wonderful.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for being
Yay!
on the
Thank you
show.
so much.
Thank you. Everyone, have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week. Until then, bye, everyone.